you don't have to write code whatsoever to create subagents. It's all through prompting. So, and then of course the reusability is key. So that's like you can create specialized agents at such a granular level or high level as well. But like if I have a folder on my computer that has some type of specialized information, I always repeat the same process. I can create a team of subagents that I can just reuse all the time. And then the permissions, there's actually a lot that comes with like enterprise using these within businesses. Now, these are still development tools. I don't think any, unless you're like really cutting edge company, you're probably not going to be handing Claude code to all your end users. But you can see that they're thinking about and building into the system, like how will this actually be usable within the enterprise? And I think they've done a really nice job with this. I think one of the most important concepts to understand here when we're talking about subagents is the different levels of memory. So if you look at the documentation, you'll see we have project subagents, and then it shows you the folder. You see the dot there, dot Claude. That is just the local path on your computer. And then we have the system path, and that's at the user level. So what that allows you to do is create your preferences and customization like for your entire computer. Or maybe I just want this special instruction and these preferences at the folder level. So that is like that right there gives you so many different options and ways that you can design your own custom system. And then even beyond that, that's like for me as an individual, somewhere in here they have a note about more like a team setting. Sorry, I had this bookmarked.
I know that they have a when you're using Claude Code, they do have the ability to share configuration files and Claude Code configurations between developers within the same team. So it might just be an extension of that, right? Because they do have like configuration around, you know, code conventions or, you know, packages or any of those like dev environment kind of setup stuff. So you can share that around.
Yeah,
So that would make sense.
yeah, exactly. Here's an example. An example of what I was talking about. I guess this is more specific to MCP, but you can see here that you can create a .mcp.json file, and then that would allow you to have like a shared workspace that you're collaborating with people. And for that project and that team, you customize those specific MCP tools and settings for that project.
Just going back to just at a high level, like very simply defining like these agents and sub-agents. So you have the high level, which I guess we could call like the supervisor, which effectively is the way you interact with it via the terminal, right? And then, yeah, that example there is like you save it in the documentation, and it says like, for example, just above that, I believe it's like save and use, on the section, the quick start. The example is like use the code reviewer subagent to check my recent changes, is an example of like invoking these different agents. But like you said, the definition of one of these subagents is a markdown file, right? That's all it is, or is
Yeah,
it more than that?
exactly. No, that's it. It's a markdown file, and it's really interesting to me that we've talked about like A2A protocol. They have agent cards, right? And some of these JSON based abstractions of like MCP is going that direction as well, where you might like an MCP server card that's a JSON object, and it defines like all the packages, what those tools do, etc. So this is actually very similar, and while they are defined as markdown files, it's like exactly the same thing. Here's where you can see an example of the markdown file format. So that's all it is.
And it's a
It's
description.
a name of your,
Yeah.
it's the name, description, and then what tools it has access to. And this will probably change by the time who knows, it could be by the time we publish this podcast. But I think the MCP tools in combination with the subagents is, I think it's unique because OpenAI, you mentioned agent, OpenAI agent. Well, they have the agent using tools in the background, but it's, as far as I know, you can't use it in combination with your MCP tools that you've added. So like if you've created custom connectors or you're using the built-in ones that they released, I don't believe you can use those in combination with agent, where Claude subagents, you can. So that adds just another dimension, I guess, to the level of customization, is just being able to define tools. And like you said, you have your primary generalist. You could think of it as like supervisor Claude, and you wouldn't even have to give the generalist access to any MCP tools. You could even define your specialist subagents to have access to very specific tools. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And then interestingly, it says like in the tool section definitions, you can just have them all inherit all of the tools from the top level agent as well. So if you don't list any, it will just cascade, kind of like a style sheet. It'll cascade all of the tool availability down through the subagents if required, which is also really cool. The thing that I thought was interesting in this is if you scroll down to the explicit invocation section, just above that it says, basically it's kind of giving examples, and then there's some example subagents in the documentation. They've got a code reviewer, so you can see like how they're actually specified: a code reviewer, a debugger, and a data scientist kind of subagent examples. To encourage Claude to be more proactive in its subagent use, you can use the terms proactively or must be used in the description field. So when you're defining your agent, for example, in the code reviewer, in the description field in here, it says, this is an expert. The description, the code reviewer, expert code reviewer specialist, proactively reviews code for quality, security, and maintainability. And there must be some sort of self-reference within Claude Code that says, all right, well, whenever those kinds of things are mentioned, this is my dependent subagent that is kind of prioritized, right?
Yep.
And
actually,
it'd be
there's
great to see
another,
like
yeah,
the system prompt underneath that and how they've actually figured that out, because they must have updated their system prompt to execute on this for this kind of architecture, right?
yeah, and I think the settings, that's something that I hadn't mentioned yet, but you can also customize. There are settings files. Where does it describe? And that gives you another dimension as well. And I think what you're saying there would be more defined in the settings.
It's interesting how they describe the subagents in the Markdown as well. It's a very consistent structure in the Markdown files. It's like basically it's the metadata, so the name, the description which we were just discussing, and the tools like bash, read, write, basic ones, and then other things. But the actual model, agent card, if we can call it that, in this Markdown, is very technical in its language. It says when invoked, it does X, Y, Z. Its key practices are writing optimized SQL queries for this data scientist. And then for each task, there's also a descriptive kind of execution framework. It's like for each analysis, explain the query approach, et cetera, et cetera. So they must be a best practice kind of structure. I don't know if you played around with the ones that you did in your demo, like if like what's more or less effective. Like, did you follow this pattern, or did you just go whatever, like just stream of consciousness? Or did you say, hey, Claude, generate me all of these agents?
Yeah, I've all of the above, and I don't know the best answer. Like I guess they call it meta prompting. Using AI to generate your prompts is not always the answer, but when you're doing quick little things like this, or maybe just like some one-off stuff, it's totally fine. And in fact, the way that this works, that's built in. So let me just open a terminal and I'll show you.
Yeah. While you're doing that, it must get off the rails pretty fast, because they've got the best practices and all the stuff that we've already described, like being very specific and writing detailed prompts, etc. But the last thing they say is version control these, check project subagents into version control. So there must be like pretty significant, like wild variants of things that occur, so you can roll back specific updates to say subagent prompts pretty rapidly, I'm imagining. It also says like don't overload them. So don't overload them with tools. Like limit their tool access. So there must be some sort of like tool confusion component, which is not uncommon, I guess. And
Yeah,
that's
well,
cool. You can also
the number
chain
of
them as
the
well.
number of
Actually.
tools you load in, that also affects your context window consumption as well, because it takes, like, if you have an MCP server with like 30 tools, it has to pull in and like really long descriptions. Of course, that's great for making it most effective, but it also consumes your context window as well.
I think
A
it's
lot of things
interesting.
to think about.
Yeah. You can also, well, yeah, context management is always a massive problem, right? So that's a good point. The other thing in the docs before you start kicking off into this is chaining subagents. So you can just literally give your supervisor a chain of prompt, which is like first use the code analyzer subagent to find performance issues, then use the optimizer subagent to fix those problems that the subagent found, which again is sort of just like a more effective way to get Claude to execute its flow when you can't like really see what's going on under the hood. I don't know. Would all of this go away if they just like showed us the reasoning chain and let us sort of stop it and interrupt? Kind of like with the ChatGPT agent. Actually, that's one of the best features I've seen in that. Is just you can interrupt it midstream and say no, you're going off the rails. Like you can quote unquote supervise more effectively, which is something that frustrates the hell out of me with Claude Code because all I see is just like, all right, I've burnt through 1,000,000 tokens and I've been thinking for 40 minutes. I'm like, yeah, but where's your head at? Kind of thing.
I've thought that with Claude Code, it's been much better as far as being able to interrupt, but you don't have that.
Well, maybe unless I'm not using it correctly, which could be it's not unlikely. But if I have a timeout or I'm not exactly sure what it's doing. Sometimes I'll just like because I use it over the top of Cursor sometimes. So I'll be working in the same project folder. I'll initialize Claude Code, and then I'll also be using the asking feature to like go in and evaluate the code that it's creating within the project. So I kind of look at it as it's generating the files and then have the cursor agent looking at it as well, not executing in agent mode, but just like in evaluation kind of ask mode. So I do that to try and peer under the hood. But if it's just thinking about stuff or if it's going to look at websites or if it's doing all the other stuff under the hood, then I didn't think you could actually see that reasoning chain, right? In Claude Code. You can't actually see that.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the thing with Claude Code is it's kind of like we said earlier with Google. It's the engine, so there are so many opportunities for building rich applications on top of this. But you're right, there's a lot of there's a lot to be desired in terms of like observability. Maybe not on the backside. You can actually, I'll talk about that too. You can configure observability just like Langsmith and some of the other things we've talked about. But from a user standpoint, while you're using it, yeah, I've spent a lot of time kind of like looking at these. They pretty much looks like logs and trying to figure out what is it doing, where's it at.
Yeah, what did it
Um,
do? What
but I
decisions
think
did it make and
that's going to
why?
be more application level stuff.
Yeah. All right. Take me through. I'll stop interrupting you now. I'm keen to see it in action.
No, 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 not at all. Not at all. Okay, so I brought this up because I was going to show how Claude Code Subagent has built-in capability to essentially do meta prompting, which is using AI to generate your agent card or what you want to accomplish. So, Tom, how many times have you done this where you open the terminal and you start typing your thing, and then you're like, "Oh shit, I need to open Claude first." I've been doing
Yeah,
that
like
actually quite a bit.
init, and it's like init what? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so key concepts with Claude Code is these slash commands. That's basically like your shortcut to all the configurations and settings, even MCP tools. But you can do a lot actually with some of these. But we will focus on agents. So all I did, let me just do it one more time. You're kind of all I did was typed in Claude, and it launches Claude Code. So then I type / agents. And as you can see here, I already have quite a few subagents that I've created. These are just tests. But right here, you have an option, create a new agent. And then we were just talking about the scoping. So you can set this up to be available. at the project level or your user level. So I guess they call it here personal. We'll select project. So that means the folder that I have open here, it's called build Claude code pod prep. So this agent will only be available in that folder. Now, what do we need our agent to do, Tom? I can just steal another one. Like let's just research. So let's do.
How about you do a hugging face researcher that looks for trending models, data sets, and projects on Hugging Face in the last week. So expert researcher, there's an expert on Hugging Face research models and training projects past week.
Okay, well, it doesn't really matter how, I mean, it does a little bit, but I don't have to spend a ton of time constructing this initial prompt because when I hit enter, it's going to basically just do an improved version of that, right? So I hit enter, and now Claude, the primary instance of Claude, the generalist, is thinking about it, and it's going to create a much better version of that markdown file or that agent card that I described.
All for the lowly token count of 5 trillion tokens. I go off into a box and think for a while like Claude usually does. All right, here we go.
Okay,
so what do we got?
Next, after I get past this, it will show the system card. But you see, it basically prompts you and says, "Do you want to give the subagent access to all your tools, or do you want to customize it a little bit?" So if I go to custom options, I can see the entire list of these are primarily MCP servers that I have attached. But you'll notice here at the top, these are built-in tools. So you can select those as well. So you can get as granular as you would like. For now, I'll just select all, and next it's going to ask me the model to select. Shit, I just hit enter. You can also customize the colors, which seems kind of novel, but it's actually pretty useful if you want to create like mappings to different types of categories, or the red agents have these types of tools, the blue agents don't have any tools, whatever. I mean,
yeah, awesome. If you go to the bottom there, so that Hugging Face Trend Analyst one, can you open it now and you can view the agent, right? Okay, or edit the agent.
Yep.
And then you can define, all right, cool. This is, yeah.
So you can see my prompt or my requirements were like nowhere, sorry, lost. My requirements were nowhere near this level.
Right. I can see why this is powerful, because then you can just meta prompt it out and then you could quickly build out all of your specific components. So you could do this. I wonder if you can go one level up and just say, could you go one level up and say, hey, Claude, I'm working on a website project for an e-commerce company in the clothing business. Create me all of the subagents I'll need for this entire project. Or is it one by one? Right. Yeah. So you can get pretty fast. Yeah, that's great.
What I've noticed, I'll have to experiment more. But if I hadn't created any subagents, it wouldn't, like, I haven't been successful in just prompting Claude and saying create these subagents. But if there are some that already exist, I have been able to do that, where I don't even have to use that / command. It basically just looks at the markdown, makes it like a template, and then you can just on the fly create subagents. Which exactly, Tom, you're starting to like. Those are the types of things where I'm sitting here going, yeah, this is revolutionary. I mean,
and if you've got like a team that you're working with all on Claude Code, you have your team, you'd have a process that you have, and then you'd share all of that with everyone. And then specific tasks, I'm assuming you would create user level subagents, right? Or say you're going between different languages or like different elements of your stack or products, whatever it is you're building. Yeah, right.
Right. And I don't know. I think the system is actually designed specifically not to do this. Trying to remember now where I created those. So I was curious. Hopefully it's this folder. And I was thinking about basically like trees of agents and subagents. and thinking about like the top level supervisor at the user level. Well, by default, you're specifically designing the project level agents so that they're isolated and you can't access them from another level. However, I think you can. So I was experimenting with this concept of I created a task decomposition agent at the user level. With the idea being it can be like really, really good at understanding how to break down tasks and then what tools and agents are available in my system, and then being able to dynamically create either new combinations of subagents that I haven't defined before, or creating new subagents using the same ideas that I already have within some of those. So let's see if this works. I'll try the task decomposition agent. Okay, so
Use the task decomposition agent to create a new team of subagents. Yeah, okay. And you're who are expert researchers, right? In academic research synthesizer.md file. Is that sort of the reference point that you've got?
what was that? Where's the?
So you're creating this, but then it says underneath that it's got like in, and see that blue text that says in academic-research synthesizer.md. Is that like editing a specific file?
Oh, no. That,
or it references something if you've got that reference point.
yeah, maybe I need to get out of. Let me just.
Right, because it's referencing that project.
Yeah, I don't know with VS Code, and that's the other thing too, is it can attach to your IDE, and I don't know
You just want
exactly.
to copy that and maybe copy it and restart it. Sorry, I won't interrupt you again.
No, you're good, man. I appreciate it.
Well, I'm just trying to understand because like terminal, like it's like we're back to MS DOS and running your entire computer from the terminal, and just like it's great in some ways, but it's not great in others, and like referencing and context and all these things, and you try and add little like additions to it. I know there's a project that's emerging, like as you write that up, there's a project that I found this week that's basically just trying to make a beautiful kind of terminal experience. I'll pull it up and add it to the show notes. Basically, it's like trying to solve that problem. But I'm like, guys, that problem was solved by Windows back in the day. We went from DOS and we went to Windows because of that reason.
I know, and that's what's interesting about this is it's taken the world by storm, and on the surface, it feels like almost going backwards. But then you take into consideration like what I just said about how I think just as fitting of a name for this could be Claude no code, even though it's run from a terminal. So I didn't see this coming whatsoever, but I'm enjoying it very much.
Yeah.
So, okay, so here you see the blue subagent. So I had already created this task decomposition expert at my user level, and I coded it blue, and that's actually really useful, especially this is kind of messy output to be able to see things, where it's at, who's doing what. And this might take a minute because the other thing that I did was I created a script that scans my entire machine for the subagent.markdown files and then inventoried those in a SQLite database. And it's using embeddings to like semantic search to figure out what are the best existing subagents that I have.
That's really cool.
Combine them. So this is like a hack together. It's kind of like a hack that I created, but it will absolutely this is what will happen whether it's at the application level or a feature update of some sort. It provides, if you're a creative person and just understand how this works, this gives you so much.
That's really cool, man.
Here,
I saw that and I was like, all right, well, so it's a firing up like a chroma kind of thing, like locally. And it's basically you're giving the task decomposition, you're giving Claude like a mini RAG kind of experience over the top of previously created agents so that the output will effectively be quote unquote better, more accurate, or faster, I assume. Are there online services for something like that? That'd be a cool idea. Like create something like that. Maybe we should put it in the vault. That'd be sick.
Yeah, I was thinking about it. That's why I have the project folder I'm working out. I was thinking about maybe creating something we can put out there.
Yeah.
I'll show you the
Yeah, while that's
database real
going, yeah,
quick.
spin it up. I want to see it. That's rad. And then the output basically is like it defines how many of those subagents it wants to build within that AI research team that you created, right? So there's no constraint on the number. What did you say? And I only want 10, I only want 12, or is it just like you just Claude just decides?
I didn't put anything specific, but what I've seen some notes that say you do want to limit it to maybe like 5 or so. And I've also run into quite a few things where I probably created too many and then it runs for like half an hour and you look at it and you're like, I didn't need to do that. Like, you know, um,
Yeah, and I
I don't
wonder
know if
about
you
like
can you
the
see
way to
this okay?
yeah, I can. So like this is like the SQL database. So this is pulling in all of the different agent files that you've created, right? And indexing them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. So there's, I guess, 93. I didn't think I had that
93.
many, but so that's according to this, I have 93 specialized subagents on my machine. Over here on the right, you can see, there's like metadata. What tools does it have? It has the full definition of the subagents. The way that I set this up with the embeddings, it's using the semantic similarity and the task decomposition logic, and then figuring out what do we already have that we can use. We need to create new subagents, and yeah, I
Yeah.
don't think that's really how it's supposed to work, but it's basically very quickly allowed me to apply some of the ideas that I've actually like. This is not a new idea that I came up with this week, right? This
Yeah,
is
yeah.
something I've actually done quite a bit with, just using different methods. But this allows you to basically do that like instant.
Yeah. And we spoke about this last week, right? And that's a great example of like the acceleration effect you get using some of these simple tools that I think kind of we forget about. That's a great example. So thanks for showing it. Just back on that question around like the kinds of agents and the number. It's interesting. I'd be interested to see and dig into like what people are seeing. In the documentation, they basically, it seems like they're defining them as when there is a sequence of work or when there's a specialization. But we can't anthropomorphize these things, right? It's basically just when you need the context to be narrow band for a better outcome. Kind of like that medical agent thing we talked through, that example where there's a specific directive request into one sub-agent within the kind of in that example that was a couple of episodes ago. It was types of input on a medical diagnosis where they specifically defined sub-agents to be critical, to be focused on cost, to be focused on patient experience, whatever it is. So it's like it'd be interesting to see how this emerges around how to think about the sub-agent definition scope, how narrow, how broad, and the efficacy of those things and how it applies to, obviously this is coding mostly, right? So you could pretty much think like obviously a QA engineer is very different to like a web dev to like a full stack or like whatever, like, SQL, like data analyst, all of those things, like they're well defined. But then how do you define it in terms of like outcomes as well? Like I'm looking for this specific outcome. For example, it's like a code analyzer is an outcome on performance issues in the documentation example. Just focus on that, then pass it to the sub agent, which is an optimizer, and they're not roles or people outcomes defined. So yeah, I think
Yeah,
I don't know
and
if you got any
I think
comments
in
on that.
terms of like workflows, inputs, outputs, composed workflows, and yeah. So now
That's
I'm sitting here
so,
like, well, shit. Now I actually have to sit down and map like every single type of task that I do, like,
well. Let's
because
talk through this example. This is interesting
and
because
that's the
this raises
thing
some
is
questions. Yeah,
the meta
this raises
prompting,
you.
and stuff is cool, but you also really, to be most effective, you still have to apply a lot of like thought and to some levels design. If you're going to create a complex system of tons of subagents, you need to really spend time. The fine details of those prompts will be more important the the more you scale your system. Tom, what were you saying?
Well, I want. Can you just talk us through? So we had this task decomposition kind of meta generation of sub agents within Claude, and the request was academic trends. Basically, created a team of expert researcher sub agents focused on the latest academic trends and coding projects in AI. Right? It spent 27,000 tokens and 2.5 minutes doing that. What are the agents that came out? Because that'll be interesting.
Yeah, we have a academic papers specialist, a code implementation expert, a trends analyst, and a technical integration specialist. So in that process of defining like what type of subagents, it also defined the tools that it has access to, a lot of those customizations we talked about earlier. So let's, just to demonstrate this, let's kick off. I was going to feed it the hierarchical reasoning model paper, but I think we want to have it do more broad research. So maybe just like topic is hierarchical reasoning models. We'll just leave it at that. See what it comes back with.
And yeah, that's great. So while this is kicking off, one question I have. All right, here we go. Yeah, let's do them using this team that I've created. Oh no, what's it doing?
Sorry, I thought it was going through the whole database search again. No, it wasn't.
No, it's not.
We're on track.
What I'm really interested in is referencing. So when we were talking through the documentation, it said in the description you can be prescriptive and you can say the specific language in the description, like the meta description, or I would call, of the card, where it says like if you use phrases like use proactively for, and then it describes the task. What I'm interested to see is like in the definition of those 4 agents: academic paper specialist, code implementation, trend analyst, and the technical integration. Did Claude predefine the prioritization or use of those agents in the description card as well? Maybe we can pull that up while this is thinking and transmuting. And see, this is the bit that annoys me about Claude Code. I'm like, I want to see what it's doing. I want to see the reasoning. Trace it. I want to see what it's saying.
I know. Anyway. You can hit, I think, Control R, and you can see more details.
Oh, there we go. Yeah. That. All right. I didn't know that key. What's that? What is it? Control R.
Control R.
And then, all right. So there. Yeah. Okay. So that was just me being a noob.
I don't know that this is actually working the way that we were anticipating. I was in the wrong folder. See, that's the thing is, it's there's no system here for managing. Like you create a bunch of subagents and hooks and all this stuff. You kind of at this point have to create your own management.
Well, that's interesting because yeah, you're in the wrong folder. In the documentation, it says you can be prescriptive and say use this agent, and you can invoke them specifically. Is that all you just had to do, or you're in the wrong spot? You know, use the team of agents to do X.
Yeah, sorry, I'm lost on that.
Maybe hide your reasoning traces.
Well, yeah, like I said, I don't know that was working how I planned. That was kind of hacked together, but you get the idea. Like what you understand what I was explaining there, right? Like the possibilities.
It did, yeah.
Because unless I'm just in the wrong, I don't know, I might be in the wrong folder, but I don't see where it actually created the agent cards. Seems like what it did is kind of stored those concepts in memory and then just repeated those patterns. And it's funny.
Or, yeah, if it's it wouldn't it store them in the system like .claude folder, so you'd have to go and find them. But yeah, it definitely makes sense. I'm keen to try out a few more of them and also see some of the like the swarm things that you've got moving. Like you've got heaps of them, right?
Yeah. Yep. Quite a few. Shit. Yeah. Let me jump back over to the project folder and I'll just put in that same prompt unless you have a different.
No, go for it. Check it in.
Am I sharing the VS Code? No. All right, Tom. So I'm just going to jump back over to this project folder and then issue the same prompt and see if it handles it any differently. The reason is I was demonstrating that hierarchical task decomposition concept, and I don't know that it was actually working the way that we'd expect. Oh, fuck. Forgot to remove that. Okay, this time I'm going to skip the task decomposition agent. That's a little bit of a hacky work in progress. We'll see if it actually creates the agent. So you can see here that it lists the agents available in this folder. So the agents actually by default, they get created in the agents folder under this .claude. I, for organizational purposes, started putting them in specific folders, and that still works. Like it looks at the agent folder and then looks at the entire tree.
Do you know if, just on that, can subagents have subagents?
Now you're thinking, Tom. The
Is this Inception? So
yeah,
like,
that's a good I think you can because there's I skipped over it, but at the project level, you can also define memory and settings at the local project level, which would be more like even more granular. So with the way that this works in general, I would think you can, but I haven't tried that yet.
Claude Code is a hackable toolkit, right? Like it's an open source thing that you can hack and update if you got the skills. I wonder if people are just taking this and launching products like sub-agent products. Because I saw recently, it's not released yet, but Stripe is working on a billing feature which is just inference percentage uplift. So you can just say, hey, I'm just going to charge you percentage uplift on your inference to use my interface, my wrapper over the top of anything. So you could basically just say, all right, I've got all my sub agents and my, I've optimized it really well for for these specific tasks. Launch it with like a simple vibe coded UI and just have these things executed. There must be people doing that in the vibing world.
I think so. You're absolutely right. Tom, it wouldn't be the Build podcast without an MCP plug, right? So if we have time, I'll show you that. I'll get to I had to, you know.
Yeah, I love it.
It's like in my
I love
blood
it.
now. Yeah. So what do we have here? We have the proposed agent card essentially. So define the academic researcher, all the tools, examples, system prompt, yeah, output format. I mean, it's basically everything that you take into consideration when you design your agents. I mean,
So in the
what's
output,
that?
so you can actually specify like the JSON schema output in the agent MD file as well. That's cool, as it has here.
Again, another kind of like I don't know that it was designed necessarily for this, but this also allows you to create agents that can like create and run scripts as well. So that adds even more power. And talked a lot about the context window preservation. Well, there are a lot of things you could do where maybe your subagent would write a script to do something rather than process it with an LLM. Okay. Well, I'm just gonna hit yellow mode here so we can get through this. But you understand, like this is pretty much the high level of Claude Code, subagents, how it works. But there are quite a few customizations and settings and different ways you can set this up. But we're going to end up with a team of 4. Oh, interesting. I hadn't seen this happen yet. You know how I was saying that I created these folders and categorized them by teams? It looks like in this instance, it picked that up and it created this one in a research folder.
Yeah, so it's following your folder convention. It's probably as a result of being trained on lots and lots of Next.js, like tree structures. It's interesting in the description, the meta description at the top there, it says use this agent. So it is programmed to meta define, like the meta prompting is using the conventions that they define in the documentation, right? Use this agent when, or, invoke when you need to.
Yep, exactly. I don't know where it's at. I created a sub agent to create sub agents that has like the documentation already uh, predefined and stuff like that.
So it's defined. I'd
I
love
guess
to
while we're
see.
waiting on that, we haven't really touched on the memory. Like I've mentioned memory a bunch of times without specifically talking about these Claude.md files.
Yeah, let's go through that.
So yeah, it's essentially like the same. I mean, for any developers out there, it's the same as like your agents.md. And this is not a Claude Code specific concept. It's just kind of an extension on where things are going or how people have been thinking about these things. So you see, I actually have 2. I have a local, which I guess that doesn't help me illustrate because it's at the root level anyways. But this is everything, and it's so nice because you can easily view it and modify it yourself.
And this is basically the file when you initialize a Claude instance, right? It will
Yeah,
scrub through your pack, through whatever it can see in the project folder, and then it will create its Claude MD file.
that's exactly right. Thanks for keeping me on track, Tom, because
I've started when I've been
I
using
just
Claude
mentioned that.
Code. I've actually, because I found that it
Yeah,
wasn't.
when you launch Claude Code, the very first thing that you should do is type /init initialize, and that will create your claude.md file. I believe your settings as well.
Yeah.
And then, well, this is an existing code base and I already have the Claude file, but I've still been using init and it'll just update it.
It does update it, yeah. And I've found like if you're building a new project, just initialize, like clone the repo, then do the init, like because otherwise it just fills it up with like I'm just Claude custom, and then it's just a waste of tokens. But what I've found is it's pretty concise, so it won't log a range of things that I was hoping to keep in there. So when I've been using it, I've started asking Claude to say, all right, create the the planner versus the executor mode, so you can switch it over, and if you like alt shift tab into planning mode, right? I say, all right, well, here's my task, plan it out. It might be like plan it out and create your sub agents in this case. And then I'll say, right, commit that to a plan.md file and then update your Claude MD to reference the plan. Although I guess now I could just have a sub agent always executing this workflow in the background, which is another kind of use case of this, right? And then I've also started putting in a log file as well. So to say, all right, well, commit everything to the log of the changes and track changes that have been made, so that I'm trying to basically make sure it doesn't get into that recursion loop where it tries to solve something, it fails, and I tell it it's failed. And then it, like, I'm trying to use the log as a self-referential point to make it understand the failures that it's had in the same session, because it won't. I tried to do that into the MD file and it just refuses to make it really verbose. It refuses to put lots of stuff in there.
Yeah, that's a valid point. Honestly, I think what you're touching on is going to get to the point of like self-improvement. I think you can already do that with this system if you design it properly.
Yeah. And so they didn't ship
So
it. They didn't ship this update with a set of standard ones, right? They just put the documentation out. They didn't say, and you can like download just some example ones to get you started. Well, they did, like agent files.
no, they just provided those examples in the documentation, but when you launch Claude, it doesn't give you any option for like create a demo or create sample agents. Okay, so we're almost we're getting there. And this is definitely not the type of it's not the system for like just doing quick things. It's actually can take a really long time. Whether you're talking about creating agents or doing a research project or coding project or whatever. So success.
And so it's created the same. Well, actually, no, these are different ones from the last like test run we did. So there's an academic trends researcher specializing in the academic trends, blah, blah, blah. An AI coding projects researcher looking at GitHub, frameworks, real world AI applications. And what were the other two? There's the orchestrator. Then there's a paper analyzer sub agent. So trying to get, I'm assuming, the key components out of that. So offloading that task. And then there's a Hugging Face trends analyzer as well.
Yep. Now, thinking through this, like right before we were talking about the task decomposition thing that I set up, and in that case, it probably would have said, well, we already have some agents here that might work for this. But in this instance, it just created all the new ones, right? So now that we actually created the subagents with that method, if we say
so
use
well, just before you do that, Cameron, if you go back to the orchestrator, you'll see that it actually specified queries that it will respond to. If you go accepted inputs in the team section further down, that's fascinating. It says accepted inputs are the request, which is the research query in the context. You can scope it, say comprehensive trends, implementation papers, and then the time frame, recent or historical, and then the depth as well. That's really cool. And I wonder how that, in its execution of that within the sub agent definitions, changes their behavior based on those keywords. Man, I can see why you've lost a week playing with this tool.
Yeah, I don't think it's a loss at all. But yeah, it did get me a little sidetracked. But I think it's very important, and it's changed the way that I'm developing some of the ideas that I have. So yeah, let's actually run through this basic example, and I'll show you some other quick things. So we're going to use the research subagent team to create a paper on
hierarchical reasoning models. This will be really interesting because I tried to do this as a human to try and find more information about that concept, any other research papers that they reference, any independent implementations of it.
You know what's funny is I actually took that HRM paper and I created a team of subagents that kind of try to like simulate. They're totally different things, but tried to like simulate that concept. And actually, I don't know, maybe it's not so different because what I was explaining about like all these different scopes at the project level, user level, maybe there is some bleed over there with the whole concept of HRM. So it's using the AI, the research orchestrator, throwing some errors down here. What are these? I tried to call it self, maybe? I don't know. Took a second to get back on track. Let me open the details, see if that helps. Nope.
Yeah, that's weird. So it said it threw an error saying I couldn't find the AI orchestrator, but then it did. Oh, right. It said I need to use the general purpose agent to access the custom AI orchestrator agent first, and then it went and found it, and now it's executing across those subagents.
Still don't know that this is working the way that I expect. Web search task. See the task, that's a task agent, which is like generalist.
Open up
So I
the
believe right now,
I don't
reasoning.
think
It's even using.
So open up the logs so we can see.
That's what I was trying to do, but it wasn't.
It's not giving us the
Show
detail.
the detail. Yeah, but what we should see happen here. Okay, now it's going to invoke the coding projects researcher. So we should see a color coded model. See, it references these. It says invoke AI research paper analyzer, but it doesn't show the steps like what I would expect. It's where I don't know. I need to set up some like tracing or something to be able to see more details. Here, let's try. While this is going, Tom, the other day you were talking about you trying to use scripts to edit videos, right?
Yes. So like an orchestration layer over the top of specific video LLM video model calls to orchestrate a video generation. I have made a fair bit of progress on that, specific to a couple of applications I've been thinking about in my day job. But this using this sub-agent orchestration kind of flow would be amazing for that.
Let's just abandon this one because I do want everybody to be able to see how this actually works. But I could see, and I guess I've kind of run into it even before today, where I'm like, cool, I have my agent team set up, and then I go back and look, and it almost like tricks you into thinking that it used that agent team, but it didn't. Okay, yeah, it's hard using one monitor, man. When you're so used to multiple monitors, and then the way I have this set up, trying to share, and okay.
And there is a
VS
YouTube
Code
thumbnail if I've ever seen one.
They're kind of stoned, man. What were you doing that day?
That's just my general face. Look at that.
Okay, so let's try this. I just imported this video. It's a little clip from one of our podcast episodes, and let's see if we can get an agent team to what do we want to do, like transcribe, try to cut it together. I guess if you've been messing with these, you probably know some good prompts that will actually do this.
So the workflow that seems to work for, at least for, say, in this context, that's a podcast excerpt, is a flow of extracting the raw description, right? Or raw transcript and data,